All right, time for another edition of Sharp or Square. Chad was super sharp. I was kind of sharp. I was 3-2 last week. All of our odds provided by DraftKings. Chad, of course, the CCO, the Action Network. I'll tell you, I have taken more favorites than any other year because I think there's becoming a gap offensively between the haves, the quarterbacks that are good, and the have-nots. And so Monday, I made a huge mistake. I took Brock Purdy over Kirk Cousins at home, and Cousins was great. So I'm going to throw you a game, and it's very number dependent. I don't like it at 3.5, but at 3, it's interesting. I don't think we're paying attention to how good the Texans are. And just hear me out. They destroyed Pittsburgh. They destroyed Jacksonville. Okay, this is a team that is a play away. They should have beaten the Falcons, although the Falcons was the right side. This team has taken quality teams, playoff teams, high seeds potentially, and destroyed them. Carolina, we laud them for keeping it close in the first half against Miami. They are in complete, utter rebuild. At -3, I love Houston. At 3.5, I'm a square. But let's say the number drifts back to Texans -3, which I'd take. Is that sharp or square?
Totally sharp. The wise guys have been on CJ Stroud from the beginning. And when I say from the beginning, I mean March. There's nobody in the professional betting community who spent a lot of time looking at a tape and spent a lot of money betting on the NFL draft who thought, oh yeah, I like Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. It's pretty well known within sort of the inner circle of NFL executive-dom that Bryce Young was an owner's pick and that the player most people wanted was CJ Stroud. He landed the Texans. He's been by far the best rookie quarterback, and not just sort of making good plays and then not making mistakes, but he's made Robert Woods look good. He's made Nico Collins look good. He gets
one of his targets back this week too, by the way. I think Tank's back this.
That's right. You know, his worst game, he still ended up leading the team to a touchdown drive in the final 2 minutes. And then they ended up losing because the defense couldn't stop anybody. But look, this guy off a bye, the wise guys like the Texans at -3, which is why it's gone up to 3.5.
All right. The Steelers have been outgained in every game. And in fact, they've often been awful for large chunks of the game offensively, but they found ways to win. I think that ends this week. Jacksonville's a better team at 2.5. Jacksonville, I think, has a real shot. I mean, what's interesting about Jacksonville, 3 games in a very short period, on the road for 2 games. We were worried how they play against Indy. They keep kind of busting up these trends because they're probably pretty good. Outside of Kansas City last year, where they felt a little overwhelmed, they kind of stack up with everybody when I watch them play. -2.5, they're the side to me over the Steelers. Don't care about home and away. Weather's not a factor yet. Sharp or square?
No, it's the Steelers are the sharp side. It all may come undone one day for the Steelers, but Mike Tomlin is the most profitable coach in the NFL against the spread the past 20 years. Mike Tomlin against teams that are over 60% winning percentage regularly wins at home as an underdog. Mike Tomlin as an underdog at home, 16-9 straight up. Forget about against the spread. We saw it last week. We've seen it against the Ravens. This team is really weird because they played terribly in the first half. And then in the second half, the defense starts to grind down the offense a little bit. And TJ Watt, when he's on the field, it's just a different team, right? He tilts the field in the direction of the Steelers. We saw last week, the first play of the second half, interception, runs it back to the 3-yard line. It catapulted them to a win. I think the Steelers are better with Deontay Johnson back. It frees up George Pickens to be more of a threat downfield. It makes Kenny Pickett more comfortable. It's just a better offense. That said, the Jags are an interesting team. So I'm a little bit nervous about it. Like, there have been times this year, Steelers against the Ravens, bet it, didn't even think about it. Steelers against the Rams last week, bet it, didn't even think about it. I don't know why. I'm a little more nervous about the Jags, but I'm still taking the Steelers, and that's the sharp side.
All right. An interesting game that I I'm reticent to do this because I have twice had the Jets as my last team I didn't take, and I believe in both times they would have covered. So I don't like the Jets as a favorite against anybody. So I would tend to take the Giants plus a field goal with Tyrod Taylor, who's not prone to mistakes. That would be my feeling. I just don't think Zach Wilson as a favorite is ever a comfortable bet. I think this defense, let's be honest about it. The Jets really have one perimeter weapon, one, Garrett Wilson. It's still a really meager receiving core. So if they can't run the football effectively, Washington struggled against the Giants doing that. I got to take 3 points in a game that should be really low scoring, sharp or square.
Totally sharp. Wise guys love the Giants this week. They like the idea of Tyrod Taylor playing instead of Daniel Jones. He's not mistake prone. He runs the offense that Brian Daboll wants him to run, which is really important. Right. But also defensively, the Jets, everyone believes, are lights out. The Jets defense and its success is predicated this season on their ability to force turnovers. 13 turnovers this year, 16 all of last year. But last year, sort of the advanced metrics, their expected points allowed per drives, things like that. And Bill Barnwell at ESPN wrote a great column about all this week. They're kind of middle of the road, and they're winning and keeping themselves in games. We saw it against the Eagles based on their ability to force turnovers. If you're playing Tyrod Taylor, who's not as prone to turning the ball over, that takes away a huge advantage for the Jets defensively. So yes, the wise guys are on the Giants.
All right, another game, which I'm undecided now, but off a bye, offensive coach Joe Burrow against a San Francisco team now in a backup quarterback with no Trent Williams or Debo. Sam Darnold is built for Kyle Shanahan, perhaps, but I'm not sure if he's built to be inserted missing a left tackle and one of their specialty players. If I get 4, it feels like a slam dunk Cincinnati. At 3.5, probably still is. I'm undecided on it, but I've gone back and forth. J-Mac and I talked about this on the air and off on FS1. I would think Bengals, anything over 3 would be the side, sharp or square.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's you're nailing it at the number. Similarly to the Texans conversation, you get -3, you're probably going to take the Niners. If you can get the hook at 3.5, you can get it at 4, then you're going to take the Bengals. I think before this game, a lot of consensus was going to be on the Niners. They've had some bad luck. They missed a field goal. That cost them against the Browns. They missed a field goal, had 3 strange, uncharacteristic turnovers. Turns out 2 of them might have come after Brock Purdy was concussed and threw interceptions. And they gave up a weird touchdown at the end of that first half against the Vikings on an all-out blitz that is just rare for Steve Wilks to call. And so this team was coming back home as a 5.5-point favorite in a game where I think a lot of wise guys thought, okay, the Niners are going to get right. Now Purdy's out, but I think the consensus is going to be if they're a short favorite, they're still going to back them. If wise guys can get the hook, they'll take the Bengals. People are not that convinced Joe Burrow's back. And he did not look great in the second half of that game they had right before the bye. He's still having trouble getting the ball downfield, not great percentage-wise throwing the ball downfield. So there's a lot of sort of mixed feelings about this. This is entirely about the number.
Okay, I think Patriots plus 9.5 at Miami feels right, not because they beat Buffalo. Injuries on the O-line. I think it's very clear that Miami has not beaten a playoff team since week 3 of last year, or what we consider a top-end team. It's a lot of fake Gucci loafers and leasing a speedboat. It's fun to look at, but when you dig deeper, don't have much of a chin. Offensive line's bad. Translation, New England will get pressure. They do usually even against decent O-lines. They're running the ball a little better. Mac Jones with confidence. Belichick buoyed by that contract that's public. The team played with a certain swagger. It's not just the Buffalo number. It's a division game. 9.5's a ton. I do think weather cools. You're not going down to Miami in the swamp in the second week of September. It's not going to be a factor. I think I would have to take New England in the points, sharp or square.
Yeah, that's the sharp side. And it's funny you say sort of the fake Gucci's and speedboats, right? Like, look, Miami is a reflection of the city it's playing in right now, and they have not beaten good teams. And we've talked about this last week. My biggest bet of the season was the Eagles at 2.5 over the Dolphins, right? And what we're going to see, what we started to see with the Patriots against the Bills, Bill O'Brien, a lot more with Mac Jones under center, a lot more short passes. That defense, which had lost Matthew Judon, had lost Christian Gonzalez, started to figure out, okay, how are we going to play? How are we going to rush the passer? The Dolphins, without key players on the offensive line. I do think Tyreek Hill practiced today, so very good chance that he plays on Sunday. But the wise guys, they pushed this number from 10 down to 9.5, down to 9. Divisional games, the underdogs in divisional games, the last decade, 60 games above 500 against the spread. And we got a few of those games this week.
Listen, we've all had fender benders in our life. Sometimes it's even more serious. But even if it's somebody else's mistake, you can lean on Morgan & Morgan. It's the nation's largest injury law firm. 100 offices and over 800 lawyers. With over $15 billion, that's billion dollars recovered, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting for you to get full and fair compensation. Submit an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan. It's really, really easy. It's almost like a quarterback, an offensive head coach, and a GM that gets them good weapons makes their life easier. We all need somebody, good or bad days, to make our life a little easier. That's what Morgan & Morgan does. If you're ever injured, check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial pound LAW, that's pound 529, from your cell phone. This is a paid advertisement. I don't like big favorites, but I do think my general rule, if quality teams get humiliated, they almost always play well the following week. We saw this with the Cowboys and the Chargers. Detroit humiliated at home. Raiders, Jimmy Garoppolo, very few snaps this year. This is a very average team. I know it's 8 to 8.5, all odds provided by DraftKings. I said this week. Don't sell your Detroit stock. They're going to win the division. They're going to win 11, 12 games. They're built the right way. Pass rush, O-line, solid coaching. They need another corner. So does everybody not named the Jets. This is the rare large number, and I don't bet big favorites. I could see a 30-20 here and not be shocked, sharp or square.
Yeah, it's pretty sharp, actually. The early lean has been on the Lions because of everything you just said. Good chance to get right at home. Much better coaching, much better team. Talk about a team and a coach that reflects the ethos of its town, right? Like, this is as high flying as they can be, and as good as Jared Goff has been, like, this is a smash mouth team, and their run defense is fierce. And that's something that the Raiders haven't been able to figure out when they're on offense. Jimmy G, who knows what he's going to be when he comes back, but also the Raiders, the coaching is terrible. The roster is terrible. They got lucky in their last couple of wins. This should be a huge, huge opportunity for the Lions. The one thing, it's funny you say that they should win the division. So, because, this is what we do. I was looking at the NFC North futures, and the Lions are minus 400. The Vikings, who have won 2 in a row, are plus 550. And who knows what will happen with the Packers this weekend. And maybe we're going to talk about that game. But the Lions and Vikings play each other twice in the last 3 weeks of the year.
I know.
So who knows? Like, can the Vikings stay within 2 games of the Lions?
Hey, look at the Viking schedule coming up. A lot of Jordan Love's on it. Watch Minnesota go on a 6-game heater. This was the one you circled as an L. They got nothing but Desmond Ridder and Jordan Love. And by the way, Justin Jefferson comes back. Jordan Addison now established. O-line's playing very well. Watch Minnesota sneak into a wild card discussion.
Here's what I would say. I think the Packers are going to beat them. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't stay in sort of in contention, because, like you said, their schedule the rest of the year is so easy, really easy. Like, you're not kidding when you talk about the quarterbacks they're going to face. And I don't know if you're going to ask me about the Packers, but I'll just give you a freebie right now. Wise guys love the Packers this week.
Why? Tell me why.
They just think this is a stinky line. They feel like they look at what happened last week in Denver, and Jordan Love's receivers had a lot of drop passes. They're going against a defense that still is so blitz happy, and Jordan Love has actually been very good against the blitz. It frees his receivers up into single coverage. It gives Christian Watson an opportunity to extend the field. It gives Aaron Jones an opportunity to be in single coverage out of the backfield. Minnesota, last week, I said it about the Niners. It's just as true about Minnesota playing the Niners. Kirk was on fire, but they got very lucky. Like, the Niners had many, many opportunities to win that game and had some really sort of what we like to call luck factors working against them, with some odd, uncharacteristic moments, not just for the Niners, but in the game of football, right? And so I think that the Vikings going into this game just overvalued. They beat a dominant team in a really high-profile spot on television, and that lends to people coming in to back them. It's a pros Joe's game. Majority of the money, meaning the big bettors, are on the Packers. The majority of the tickets, smaller money, more schmucks, are on the Vikings.
All right, we finish with two things. The first is talk me into a game. I often give it to you, and it's the Rams plus 6 to 6.5 against Dallas. So against Philadelphia and against San Francisco, they were clearly outclassed. But the fact that they hung around Pittsburgh, they are in a rebuild. One Rams player, one high-end Rams player, they have one that's in his prime, Ernest Brown. Cooper, Stafford, Havenstein, Donald, they're out of their prime. Pittsburgh's probably got 9 guys in their prime. They're young. That game was go either way entering the fourth, and it was a Pittsburgh Steelers crowd. So I think McVay is doing a remarkable job with an old Aaron Donald and mostly rookies and 6th-round, 4th-round picks. I like the coaching here. It's a lot of points. I think the Rams will stay close. They're fairly healthy. I think I'd like the Rams plus the points, but the Vegas is so smart. DraftKings, it's 7. I think it's such a great bet for the Rams. It's 6.5. I don't know. You tell me, talk me into it.
So it's interesting you bring this up. This was the biggest debate that me and my BFF, Simon Hunter, had on our podcast. And I love the Cowboys in this spot. Simon wants to love the Cowboys, but can't quite find the exact number. Like, it's 6.5. It's basically lined right, like you just said. The bookmakers know what they're doing. We cannot find sort of a consensus wise guy opinion on this because the number is so right. I'm all in on the Cowboys for a couple of reasons. I think they're much more talented. I think Mike McCarthy's a terrible coach, and I think he is putting his team at a disadvantage inside the red zone. And I think over the course of his career, it has been proven that if any other coach was working with Aaron Rodgers, he probably would have more Super Bowls. Like, he's just not a very good play caller. But the Cowboys defense is so good. Their pressure from just 4 players on the front line is insane. And the reason the Steelers beat the Rams last week is because of the pressure they got on a terrible Rams O-line. So the opportunity here is to put a lot of pressure on Matthew Stafford. And look, if he can beat the pressure and get the ball to Puka Nacua, if he can get the ball to Cooper Kupp, that changes it, because the Cowboys do have a lot of issues with their back line. But we saw against Justin Herbert, the Cowboys had 33 pressures and hit Justin Herbert 26 times, even though they barely sacked him. Like, the end of the game, Micah Parsons got him once, but that impacted him enough that he was making bad throws, rushing throws. So I also like the Cowboys off a bye, coming home. Dak, when he's at home, covers, and he covers big. Dak on the road as an underdog in these games against teams where they are playing opponents who are usually better than them in the high-profile spots that we're used to seeing, that's when he struggles. And that's where you see sort of the disadvantage that he has with Mike McCarthy as a coach. But at home, as a favorite, he's a front runner. That's a good spot to get healthy. I like the Cowboys in this spot.
Finally, what did I miss? What's the stinker-rooney that you want to talk me into?
There's two of them. There's two of them we didn't talk about.
Oh,
Two ugly division
listen,
dogs.
I know Washington's one of them, right? That
Yes.
I looked at that and I thought, you know what's funny about them? Half to half, game to game. You have no idea what you're getting. But I got to tell you this. There are moments when I watch Sam Howell and I'm like, he's a mid-level franchise quarterback. When you give him time to step and throw, he's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Washington plus 6.5. Look, Denver opened at 8.5. Got bet down to 8 by the wise guys. Got bet down to 7.5 by the wise guys. Some places it's 7 now. Wise guys loving Denver. In the past couple of weeks, first when they played Kansas City, they thought, oh, was Mahomes just off in this game? Is that why the defense was so good? And then they played Green Bay, and Matt LaFleur is really good at scheming his guys open. And Denver did a good job of stopping the Packers. Plus, Javonte Williams, 6 weeks into the season, 7 weeks into the season.
Yeah.
Much more explosive. You're starting to see Sean Payton give him the ball more. It's why you've seen, again, division games, big favorites. The Chiefs not great at covering over
They're
3.5.
Chiefs are not a big number team.
It's hard to cover big numbers when you're always favored by a big number, right? So there's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy here where you get Patrick Mahomes as a short favorite and underdog. He's so good, he's going to win in those games. But if every game you're favored by 3.5 to 10, it's hard to always cover in those games. So the wise guys like Denver, and the wise guys love Washington. They think it's a tough spot for the Eagles. They've got big games coming up, so it's a little bit of a look ahead, a little bit of a trap game on the road. Is Hurts hurt? We don't know. Is Lane Johnson struggling? We don't know. That offense still isn't perfect, so there's some money coming in on the Commanders. I like them both. I bet them both. Be my buddy. Be my buddy, Colin. Be my bad game betting buddy. I went 4-1 last week. You went 3-2. I went 4-1 because I made the extra effort. Okay. I made the effort.
You know, the downside to having taste is you won't go down to the stinkorama game, the dumpster game.
Oh, is that what you're calling it? Taste? Is that how you're framing this? That is a masterclass in narrative right there. I like it. Well done.
I'll dumpster dive and take Washington. Why not?
Well, you will.
They're all over the map, but I mean, Philadelphia comes off a big TV emotional game, late game, little less prep time. It's a division rival, big games ahead. I do think it's the kind of game that you would say to yourself, let's rest Lane Johnson. You know what I mean? This is a deep team. And we know this, that Washington has moments. We know this. So and Philadelphia I thought that Miami game was the first game I thought they really played well. And at one point it was 17-17. Yeah. So, and Miami's really a team Philadelphia's built to beat. Washington's a team that's built to play Philadelphia close. Physical, trenches, can run it a little. I don't think that's big dumpster diving. I looked at that game. Again, the wise guys are smart. Like 6.5, 3.5. Like I like San Francisco, but if 3.5, 4 was Sam Darnold, then it's not as attractive. It's just not a good bet.
By the way, I like how this ended up being, you know what? I like him. It's no longer dumpster diving. It's really, this is the fillet of home underdogs right here that you're going to
I'm Costanza. I'm grabbing an eclair out of the garbage just quickly. I'm only there 5 seconds.
That's why you are a multimedia mogul.